What's up, family? Sean Ebony Coleman here, and I am the host of the new podcast, Collateral Damage. Collateral Damage is a bold and blunt podcast series that fearlessly delves into the unexpected, unsettling, and often unseen effects of the political, social, and personal events of today. Join us as we dissect pop culture, explore the rich history of black and brown people, with a special focus on the queer community, connecting the dots between politics and our everyday lives. We dive into the vibrant world of ballroom culture and tackle the hottest topics of the moment. What's good, family? I have my first guest. I am super excited about having Larry Scott Blackmon. Yo, you do amazing work. I'm gonna allow you to introduce yourself. But first I wanna tell my audience who you really are, right?
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Yo,
Collateral Damage.
Collateral Damage. His dad is Larry Blackmon.
Yes.
Cameo. Right up. My joint. And my favorite, just like candy.
Yes. Don't leave out back and forth. And she's strange and single life. No, I'm joking.
No, but I wanted folks to understand that, and then part of my questioning, right? Because I know you politically before I even knew who your dad was. Right. So politically, I knew you was that dude.
Yes.
And then when they told me who your dad was, and then I went to one of your parties, I was like, the apple don't fall far from the tree.
No, we activate the entertainment sector quick in the family.
Baby, we had a ball in Somos.
Yes,
That's
we
all
did.
I'm gonna say.
Yes, we did.
Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. Larry Scott Blackmon, as you know, very politically active. I'm CEO of the Blackmon Organization. We are a government affairs, public relations, a public affairs shop. We have a number of different clients in the development state, real estate space, not-for-profit space, and we do great work representing our clients, and I'm so appreciative of my team. I am the chair of the Better Business Bureau for Metropolitan New York, 100 Black Men, New York State president for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I can go on and on. If it's black and it has something to do with our people, I'm probably involved in it in New York.
And that is why you're here today.
Thank you.
So, I came prepared. I got a host of questions.
Let's go. Let's dive right in.
No hot seat, no gotcha questions.
Let's dive right in.
I just want to keep it a buck with our viewers. The purpose of the show, right, is collateral damage. I want them to understand how politics plays out into their life.
Absolutely.
So my first question is, how have grassroots movements led by black and brown New Yorkers influenced city policy, whether that's in policing, education, immigration reform? How has it impacted?
So let me tell you this, Sean. I am a person that was born and raised in the projects in Harlem.
Right.
My father was on the 9th floor, my mother was on the 15th floor, and here I am.
Right.
And I moved between 9 and 15. Now, any of us that grew up in the 70s and the 80s know the impact of the crack epidemic on communities of color throughout, not just New York, but throughout the world. And one thing that I prided myself on was growing up, doing the right things, going to college and coming back and living in the community.
Right. And
the first thing that started to happen was profiling, right? As a black man, you get your taste of profiling. I can't tell you how many times, look, I drive nice cars, and I can't tell you how many times I was racially profiled by the police, pulled over, car searched, thrown up against the wall. And so what you see, and I'm bringing one to light, where there was, the keeping of lists of individuals who were pulled over, who were stopped, right?
Yeah.
The illegal stops, the searches. And that became a central theme. That movement to change that became a central theme of politics in New York City, which directly led to the election of Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers his campaigns, Bill de Blasio featured his son, who is black, who's a nice young man. I know him, I've met him. Dante de Blasio is a great young man. He wore an afro and told New Yorkers that I'm black and I want you to vote for my dad, and this is wrong and this needs to stop.
Right.
And it led to Bill de Blasio taking that message and trying to implement change led to an antagonistic relationship between City Hall and the NYPD.
Right.
Grassroots movements, whether there be for housing reform and housing fairness, whether there be environmental justice reform, take a look at the environmental justice grassroots movement in New York. There's so many great individuals. I work with a man by the name of Eddie Batista, who was known for his work in the environmental justice space.
Right.
When you take a look at the fact that I believe 7 of the 9 bus depots in Manhattan are located in communities of color, what impact does that have on our children? What are our children breathing?
Yep.
What are they taking in, right? So the movement to change that, to modernize the fleet, to do all of that, starts with grassroots efforts, and they no doubt change and impact policy. They actually lead to the election of individuals who are known for that. You know, you take a look at someone who is now State Senator Robert Jackson.
Yeah.
You know, I'm singling him out because he made his entire career around education funding, walked from New York City to Albany with advocates in a grassroots movement to increase the amount of money that's spent per child on education in New York City. And his work led to his being elected in the city council and now moving up into the state senate, where he continues to shape and mold policy around education. So grassroots movements, no matter what the sector, absolutely have an impact. They take time. That's what we need to get better at as a people.
Yeah, if you think about the current Republican Party, right?
Absolutely.
They played the long game perfectly.
They played it perfectly, and it's played out now, not just on the federal level, but in state houses where policies are coming in that are impacting the lives of everyone.
Everybody, yeah. So what would you consider the relationship between elected officials now and activist groups led by Black and brown people? Are these relationships transactional? Would you say they're transformative or antagonistic?
I would say that it's a perfect mix of all three.
Okay.
Depending on whom you talk to and who you talk to. You have some individuals who have their core beliefs and their core systems. You have a progressive movement that really believes in certain ideals that they stand true to. And in some cases, they completely adopt the position of the grassroots groups. And then you have some elected officials where the relationship between the grassroots organization and their office is antagonistic. And in some respects, you certainly see that through the office of the mayor or certain other positions where there are executive decisions that need to be made that will sometimes come in conflict with the wishes and desires of the group. I encourage everyone between the months of January and April to go up to Albany and go up for Lobby Day. That's where you see your question in full force and in action. You will see advocates who are fighting the death penalty or fighting for, right to life in certain respects. They'll lay down in the middle of the walkway, and you'll have elected officials, some of them that will stop and talk with people, and then you have elected officials that'll just say, excuse me, and walk straight by them because they don't agree with the position of the advocacy group no matter where they stand. So in some respects, this is a question where I think all three can actually be true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was going to say, do you think we need all three in order to have these successful movements, right? Because in my humble opinion, in the work that I do, we went to Albany, right? And I'm far from an antagonist. I'm more like I want to sit down and I'm going to try to sway you, right? But I understand why that antagonist is important as well. So is that what we're saying, that we need all three of those elements in order to have these successful
believe,
movements?
I think sometimes tension is good. It's like putting a shirt in a washing machine. If you have it on gentle cycle all the time, it just might not get clean. Sometimes you need to have that shirt kind of rub up against some pants and rub up against some socks to get all the dirt out. You need that tension and that scrubbing, right? And that's the same way that it is with policy. There's sometimes when you look at government, take a look at the fact that when President Barack Obama was first elected, the Democrats held the House and they held the Senate.
Yeah.
That lack of tension led to Obamacare, which no doubt has helped millions of individuals.
People,
but it also led to a certain level of antagonism and disgust towards government, which gives you what we have today.
What we have now.
There is a direct correlation, and Democrats haven't been able to really recover from that. And so the flip side of that is that did give us Joe Biden, but it also created tension.
When you say we haven't recovered, would you say we haven't recovered because of a messaging problem, or what's the delay in the recovery?
I believe a couple of things, right? And they can all be true. The first is, yes, messaging. We haven't really honed in on what our key message needs to be in terms of the benefits, right? The lives that have been saved through that healthcare initiative
Right.
specifically. So there's one in terms of messaging. The other piece is that, the reason we haven't recovered, frankly, is racism.
Right.
If you take
Name it. Let's name
if you
it.
take a look at Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, she perfectly lays this out. And racism is at the core of a lot of the tension that we had. You could take a look at what Mitch McConnell did in Barack Obama's last few
Yep.
years, where he just would not
What he
put
was allowed
certain,
to get away with.
Exactly, and he would not move judges forward. Garland is an example.
Yep.
And now we have the Supreme Court that we have.
That's stacked.
Exactly.
How would you say city policy historically, how has it historically contributed to racial disparities in housing, education, policing, and public health?
Ooh, Sean, I wish I had more time. Now you're asking me, I was an adjunct professor as well, and I talked about this, but you can take a look at the history of New York City, and you can still see the effects of redlining and everything that it is. There was a gentleman by the name of Robert Moses, who his work completely changed the landscape of New York, and it was all done through a racial lens.
Touch on redlining for folks that don't necessarily know what redlining is.
Sure,
Just give us an overview.
redlining basically, to surmise, is the act of narrowing an available living space or home owning opportunities based on your skin color.
Right.
So you would block certain people out based on the color of your skin or your race or ethnicity. So to give you an example, in Parkchester, right, there's a huge development in Parkchester in the Bronx. When that was built, it was built by an insurance company that backed the funding in partnership with the federal government. And that development redlined and blocked black people from being able to live there. And in fact, the first black family that moved in was done under a sublease, a sublet to a white family. And when the neighbors found out, that white family lost the right. They were put out of that place. Now, Parkchester and Stuytown were built by the same entity,
Right.
which both blocked black people from coming out. So from living there. So when you take a look at the history of New York City, all you need to do is look around and you'll understand why were these buildings built in the spaces they were built, and it will also tell you the funding stream.
Right.
So when you take a look at the first public housing complex to be built in New York, the first houses, that's in Lower Manhattan. You take a look at that and you look at Harlem River houses, it's the exact same design because they were built with the exact same amount of money, the exact same height. When you take a look at the housing complex that I came from, Drew Hamilton, that was built with a certain pot of money. And New York had to figure out, what are we going to do to house these growing populations of immigrants, African Americans that are coming up through the Great Migration and more. And what they did was they built public housing. Over time, they stack us on top of each other like pancakes. The funding streams from the federal government constantly gets cut. They're unable to maintain public housing. They fall into disrepair and fall into decay. And there's no better case of looking at the impact of this than Chicago, right? So when you build, and I'm going to focus on Manhattan, but you take a look at, Drew Hamilton, Amsterdam houses, Grant houses. You take a look at Polo Grounds. All of these were built with certain pots of money, and those funds dry out, and you have a city that needs more for housing repair. What happens? You have neighborhood decay. Right. Your parents are on the 15th floor, your kids are outside doing what, and you can't even yell out the window or say, hey, come back inside. This is before cell phones, this is before people. You have no idea what your kids are doing. And you think that we are all going to be okay. You have generations of families that live in buildings and that are still there. So you couple that with the lack of funding for education, lack of funding for housing. You stack us on top of each other, and then you want to know why we have issues or why we're angry or why we feel as though the American dream was for everybody except us.
And then you introduce gentrification. What are your feelings on gentrification?
And then you introduce gentrification. But let's keep going on this discrepancy, right? You have Robert Moses, who decides, you know what, I'm the great builder. I'm going to carve up New York. I'm going to put highways around every borough. New York is the one city where there's a major intersection, a major highway that blocks access to the water,
Yeah.
right? So now you have that. Then you have the Cross Bronx Expressway, which decimated community and decimated neighborhoods. And where do they build all of this? They build all of it in poor communities where the political power was at its weakest. There's a reason why the George Washington Bridge is uptown. There's a reason why it is, right? One is topography, because it's higher and you need to have a higher bridge. We saw that with the Mexican ship that ran into the Brooklyn Bridge. So you need to have a certain height for ships to get under. But also the land was cheap, and they could take the land without getting much pushback from people. And it's similarly with the Cross Bronx Expressway and all of the other expressways that decimated neighborhood and basically led to the creation of gang culture. So when you take a look at New York as a whole, history of redlining, take a look at Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center was built, first of all, they knocked down tenements and knocked down a neighborhood to build it, because this was Robert Moses's pet project.
Right.
So they build Lincoln Center, and what do they do on Amsterdam? On the Amsterdam side, they build a wall to block out the people from Amsterdam houses, the poorer people, from even being able to look inside of Lincoln Center. And it stays like that today. So New York's zoning policies were impacted by redlining. Very early on in the 1900s, when zoning was created, it was also created as a means to control populations.
Right.
And so that is the history of what we're dealing with. So when you talk about gentrification, right, I'll come to Harlem. When you look at Harlem, it's an interesting case in gentrification, because Harlem technically is, historically speaking, Harlem was from 96th Street to 168th Street. But let's say for today's purposes, 1/10 to 155th.
Right.
If you divide that by 125th Street, from 125th Street to 110th Street, you had more available vacant lots. And from 125th Street to 155th Street, you have more of an older housing stock. You have Strivers Row, which is townhouses, you have public housing, and then you have, SROs, you have other, types of tenements, other types of buildings. And basically what occurred is, when Mayor Giuliani came in, there was a fire sale of properties that the city owned. Giuliani's thing was, hey, the city's a bad landlord. We're going to sell off these buildings and we're going to give them to developers. And that then led to gentrification.
Yeah.
You're seeing that now in one of the only places where there's still available land.
Right.
South Bronx. You're seeing it now.
Yeah.
And the saddest part is individuals in the community don't even know. They see it, but they don't really realize that there comes a time when you're going to be pushed out by this.
In your opinion, what can we do differently in the South Bronx to kind of mitigate gentrification and that removal, if you will? Because where are folks going to go?
Right.
We've already priced them out of everywhere else.
Right.
But what can we actively be doing now to kind of like either pause it or make sure that the community residents that are there now receive like first dibs on whatever's going to come in that neighborhood?
I'm going to say 3 things that I believe the community can do, and that's policy, policy, policy. Become well-versed in the policies that allow developers to build, so that you ensure that local residents not only have first right, not only get first dibs, but that the AMIs and everything in terms of what the building actually costs, the developers who know that, hey, we are taking from this community, the residents of this community are going to be able to build here.
Yeah.
And the developers will say, well, we need the city and the state to work with us on subsidies to make it easier for us to build. Fine. But we need to ensure that the policy states that individuals in Bronx Community Board 1 have more than 50% or 75% of the units available in those buildings. There has to be some type of middle ground that needs to be met there.
We also need black and brown developers.
Absolutely.
I've identified that as one of the issues as well, because it's wonderful you get a developer to come in and work with you. They may give you 20% of whatever the units are going to be at a lower cost.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you still lost a substantial amount of housing to folks that are not from the community.
And the other piece that we need to protect is the culture of the community.
Yeah.
I drove through the South Bronx earlier today, and the first thing, I was on the phone with someone, and I said, I miss working here because I miss my black and brown people.
Yeah.
Just looking around, right? I miss that. And that's what people want. That's why they come in buses on Sundays and go to our churches. Because they want our culture. You can't bottle that up. And at us as a people, you could take away everything, but the one thing you can't take away is our soul. And we have something special that needs to be protected in the ongoing gentrification of our neighborhoods.
You know, I've said that about the ballroom community, right? That we need to find ways to protect our culture.
Absolutely.
Because now folks are now these are other folks that have no idea why ballroom was even started,
Right.
And they're actively having balls, and they're without inviting community, without any community input on what it should look like. I know you're also involved in the Hip Hop Museum,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Can you touch on how significant that is in preserving our culture in the Bronx and in New York City overall?
Oh, the Hip Hop Museum is a labor of love. Shout out to Rocky Bucano, Donna Davis, everyone at the Hip Hop Museum. They're doing a phenomenal job. It's going to open in 2026.
Okay.
It's in the South Bronx on Exterior Street. And let me tell you, we all know that the birthplace of hip hop is Sedgwick Avenue.
Yeah.
And
Boogie Down, baby.
Right, the Boogie Down, and this museum is going to be phenomenal. We have great partnerships in government. Mayor Adams has been phenomenal. Speaker Hasty's been phenomenal. For those of you who don't know, he's the chair of the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And we are looking at doing some phenomenal work. And that museum's gonna, I mean, I can't wait. Just can't wait.
I want to go back to some questions around elected officials. No, let's pivot. I want to talk about the budget. How has the New York City budget reflected or failed to reflect the priorities of Black and brown communities?
The budget conversation is an interesting one because there's always a tug of war and a song and dance, right? Every year, a mayor comes out and says, well, we're going to cut funding to libraries because we don't have it. And then the city council says, hey, we're going to put money back.
In, yeah.
Or we're going to cut money for parks funding and parks building. And then the city council fights and says, oh, well, we want to work and we're going to put it back. And then there's a handshake and a kumbaya. And every year the priorities change based on what has happened. The interesting part now is that with what we have going on in the federal budget, there are now unfunded mandates that the city of New York has to pick up paying for that the federal government once did. And that is going to impact the priorities that community groups want to see. I work with an organization that works with autistic children, and they were receiving funding, the city was receiving funding from the federal government for that work.
Right.
Gone.
Yeah.
Gone. And the city says, well, listen, we're picking up so many other costs.
Yeah.
Right? Even the city and the state have issues. And the city is saying, we don't know if we can fund all of these extra things that we like to do because of what we must do. And that's where political engagement and involvement in the community comes in. Because unless the people's voices are heard, that will not change.
I run a non-for-profit as an LGBTQ community center, and part of what we've been discussing is that we are going to be collateral damage to a lot of that. Right?
Absolutely.
Because to your point, folks are going to now start prioritizing.
Yes.
But they're also going to start calling their lobbyists and then their elected officials that they have excellent relationships with to make sure that their voices are heard. Like, we've lost $750,000. We're going to need to get it from somewhere. It's got to come from the state. It's got to come from the city. So those things around trans issues in particular are going to, in my humble opinion, be left behind, right? Because we're not a strong political voice. We don't have this strong political activation. For a community like that, what would be the advice to get the attention of those elected officials to make sure that their priorities are also brought to the table, that they're also gonna get a slice of the pie?
What I would say is never settle, never stop, get active. Arm these individuals with information that prove your point,
Right.
and then say, what are you going to do about it? And work collaboratively to try to resolve it. In the event that the elected officials do not wish to work, then you can say, listen, we are going to inform our constituent base that this is what happened. As someone with a constituency,
Right.
like yourself, you can send one email at the push of a button to 1,000 people and say, guess what? This person will not fund X, Y, and Z. Sign this petition and send this person information.
Right.
Take a TikTok video, let it go viral. We're standing outside of the office of such and such, who just told us that funding for this critically necessary piece will not be done. or congratulate them. We're standing here with
Yeah.
Assembly Member such and such, who today stepped up for LGBTQ rights by doing X, Y, and Z in funding, and we just want to say publicly thank you and send that to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, you forever have a friend.
Yeah. You know, when I first started doing the work, folks didn't tell me how important it was to build relationships with the elected officials. It was, you know, those other non-for-profit leaders that kept a lot of secrets to themselves. And it's just within the last, say, 10 years that I'm understanding the dynamics when it comes to doing this work and how important it is to have an ally
Absolutely.
in these offices. I'm going to ask you this question. Who holds political power in New York City, and how representative is the power of Black and brown communities?
The people hold the power. The people hold the power.
Mm-hmm.
We elect people to lead.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important that we come out and express our vote. Look, Black people as a whole, I think, are skeptics
Yeah.
of government.
You know we are.
Get it. But what happens is when we have elections and there's only 20 to 30% turnout, right, of the electorate, then a small group of people control the policy and the politics. And we are at a state in this country where we see what happens. We're seeing it right now in real time.
Right.
There are consequences, right? There's collateral damage when we do not participate in an election. We are witnessing a monarchy, someone who is sticking their thumb up at the Constitution and saying, we know we have this process where bills and laws get passed that's supposed to be collaborative and representative of the people, but screw that.
Yep.
I'm going to
doing
tell
it
you
how
what
I
we're
want
going to
to.
do. I'm going to take a plane from Qatar, and I don't care what anyone says. This long and short answer to the question is, the people hold the power, but we need to act like we have it.
So what do you say to those folks that are really apathetic to politics now, that they're looking at it and they're saying, you know, I voted, it didn't fucking matter, none of this shit is changing, I still don't have the things that I believe that I need, but we're giving money to migrants and they're getting gift cards and they'll have free housing. How do you go back into that community, right, and kind of let them say, earlier you said, it's the long game, right? It's not gonna happen overnight,
right.
But some of us have been waiting for a very, very long time for it to pivot, and it hasn't pivoted to us. So how do you go back and re-engage them in a way that excites them about the work that we have to? Because I'm excited about it because I see a shift.
Right.
I see that they're breaking the system without even realizing it. And
Absolutely.
once it's broken, it gives us an opportunity to rebuild it. But you can only rebuild it if you're excited about it and being active in doing the work.
Right.
What's the message?
The message is, I think you have to have faith.
Okay.
You have to have faith and understand that, yes, you may have voted for someone who lost, or your vote, you may believe it doesn't matter. But let me kind of share a different analogy if I can, right? There are cancer treatments that work rapidly.
Right.
You zap it with whatever and the cancer's done.
Yeah.
Then there's some cancer treatments where you zap it and it changes the DNA of the cancer, and that takes time. So when the cancer tries to replicate, it won't, and your numbers come down slowly over time. That is where we are politically. The Republicans did that and played the long game.
Yep.
And they took a step back, talked to their funders and said, okay, here's what we're going to do.
What we want to do.
We're going to win these races on the state level. We'll let the Democrats have their time.
Yep.
But on the state level, we're going to pick off people one by one, and we're going to introduce laws that change this. And guess what? We're going to attack academia.
Yep.
Because academia is the birthplace of liberal thought. And so we're going to attack it, but we're going to do it in the long run, and we're going to get somebody in that office that's going to attack the base of liberal thought.
Right.
And that person is going to be Donald Trump, a second term. And when we win this, and everyone said, here's Project 2025, here's what they're going to do.
Showed you.
And all they're doing is turning page to page to page.
And doing
so
exactly
then they
what they
attack
said.
Harvard and they attack Columbia, and some of these institutions that have weak backbones cave in. And they say, okay, we'll do what you want to do, and they'll still
And
be
he's still
cut.
going to get you. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was the long game. So my message to skeptics is, have faith, trust the long game, continue to hold your elected officials accountable, but the next time you go to the voting booth, bring 2 people with you.
I love community boards.
Yes.
Right. I think the community board can be the first entry
Yes.
into figuring out what your organizing skills are and where you fit in. They don't give them much power, right?
Right.
It's all suggested.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about community boards, why we should get involved, if there's a way that we can kind of pivot or use the power within that board, whether it's voting power or not, use the power within that community board to like make change in your local area?
Absolutely. So I love community boards. My first job in politics in New York was working for C. Virginia Fields. She was, she was the second African-American female to be Manhattan Borough president. And I represented community boards 9 and 10.
Okay.
And I know community boards inside and out, was involved in appointing people or recommending that they be appointed to the board. So what I'll say about community boards is this. Community boards are the first line of defense in New York for actions that take place, whether they be land use actions, applications for liquor licenses, zoning changes, you name it, and other controversial projects that sometimes come before the boards. The thing about community boards is this. One, you have a flavor of what's happening on the local level inside that neighborhood. Number two, community boards have something called the district service cabinet meetings, where the uniformed agencies, police department, fire department, DDC, parks department, where they go to the district service cabinet and they say, hey, we're about to renovate this park, or let's give you a report on crime. Community boards, so for example, in New York, there's a phenomenon where it's summertime, people want to be out, especially post-pandemic, they want to be outside, and they'll take a garbage can or an oil can and throw coals in it and make chicken, right? Barbecue, street barbecues. And those became magnets for other activities that would take place.
Right.
And at the community board level, that's where community board members would say, hey, listen, we have these barbecues going on. We really want people to go to a park. There's noise ordinances, noise complaints. What can we do about it? How do we work to resolve that? And that's the forum where uniformed agencies take that information back and come up with a strategy and a plan. Or in the Parks Department, I've been a deputy commissioner of 2 city agencies.
You had a lot of jobs, bro.
Yes, I've had a lot of jobs. Now, I'm not West Indian, but I worked hard,
You
Sean.
worked hard.
I worked hard. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
I feel you.
So,
I feel you.
So, we would have our meetings and they would say, listen, the community board is against this project. We want to let you know, we have an issue with rats in the park. This is a true story. We're in a meeting, guys, and the commissioner for the borough says, we know we have an issue, but the community board doesn't want us to use rat poison. And I'm like, why? Why not?
Right.
Because if we put out the rat poison, the rats eat the poison, and then we have birds that come by and eat the rats, and now you have a dead rat and a dead bird. And they don't want us to kill the birds, but they want us to kill the rats. And then we would sit there and have a 45-minute conversation around mint garbage bags and whether or not they were effective, how strong is the concentration of peppermint in the bags, and what we're going to do to go back to the community board.
Oh, wow.
This is an actual conversation, and I leave the meeting going, okay, this is your life right now. Right?
Mint trash bags.
Now, as a homeowner that's trying to keep bears out of his trash, I'm like, you know what? What is the concentration of mint? What is the concentration of ammonia that I'm going to pour in this bag? But the point is, the community board is where all of that starts.
Would you say there are any other entry points that a novice who's like just angry about the state of affairs now that they can go to like?
Absolutely. Democratic clubs.
Okay.
Social clubs. Democratic clubs, for people who are unaware, Democratic clubs are clubs that are affiliated with parties, whether it be Republican Party or Democratic Party. That's why I said Democratic clubs, because I'm a member of 2, Martin Luther King Jr. Democratic Club and Fred Samuels. And that's where politicians come to get their initial level of support and carry petitions to get on the ballot.
Are those black and brown?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, Larry. We are now in the section that I call a useful idiot.
Okay.
And a useful idiot is a person or people that believe they're fighting for a cause without fully comprehending the consequences of their actions. This person has no idea they're being manipulated by the cause's leader or by other political players. So I say all that to ask you, who would you say you're useful idiot?
Oh, that's an interesting question because unfortunately, right now, I can give you about 5 useful
I was going to say
idiots.
that.
But based on the time and where we are today, I would say that my useful idiots are the Republicans in Congress that are voting on this quote unquote big, beautiful bill. And, you know, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And that's what we're looking at. The reason, Sean, that I would tell you that they are my useful idiots is because of the lack of courage in the Republican Party. The Republican Party today has completely folded to Donald Trump. They are scared and fearful, and Ronald Reagan is turning in his grave. This is a Republican Party in Congress that makes you desire George Bush, right?
Would welcome George Bush.
You welcome W back.
Yes.
Right? To many Democrats now, W is looking like, man, we miss you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the fact that this Republican Party is looking at a bill that would further decimate federal agencies, continue the harmful cuts. I have friends that worked at the Department of Education that were let go. I've seen them cry real tears.
Yeah.
I've seen people at federal agencies not know what's happening. There was a meteorologist who came on one of the local news stations and said, listen, I can't tell you what the weather's going to be because of Doge's cuts.
Yeah.
They just let everyone go. That helps us to come up with our forecast. So we can't help it. Now you're starting to see some of these federal agencies roll back some of those cuts.
Do you think that they believe they're doing the right thing, or is it all just motivated by fear?
Motivated by fear.
And the fear is what? That they won't have a job?
That they'll be primaried. That Donald Trump will go on whatever social media outlet he's on and say something. Congress is supposed to be the checks and balances of the executive. And it is now operating as a lower level extension of the executive.
Which is sad because it's like you're scared to be primaried, but you really aren't doing any work there anyway, right? You're not standing for anything. You're not representing anybody. So either way you look at it, you don't have a job.
But Sean, to go back to the earlier conversation about grassroots movements, take a look at these town hall meetings that some of these congressional members are having.
Yeah.
You're seeing people turn out, you're seeing them turn up, and you're seeing congressional members get nervous and start to walk out. So many of them will likely be primary, not because of going against Donald Trump, but because of what's happening in their local districts.
But, you know, we can have a whole discussion about legacy media because the media is not speaking about that as much or as intensely as I think they should.
No.
Covering all, and I truly believe there's a reason that they're not, and I think it's the same fear, right? You don't want to anger this person. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying that they can't wait until Donald Trump is gone. It's 4 years, I can't wait until the 4 years is over. Do you honestly believe that in 4 years, if he's gone, and I say if, that things are going to go back to normal?
Yes, I do. I believe that politics follows a certain cycle, right? Where you have extremes. You had the extreme of Ronald Reagan, more a little bit moderate George Bush, the first Bush, Papa Bush, and then you flipped and you had Bill Clinton. Then you flip and you have George W. Bush. Then you go to another extreme with Barack Obama. Then you go to another extreme with Donald Trump. And then after Donald Trump, you go to Joe Biden. And now you're back to Trump. So I believe that the extremes tend to win out.
Right.
But what has always been the check and balance was Congress. And now we're in a situation where the long game has been played so strategically that with redistricting at their side, Republicans have a stranglehold on some of these seats in some of these areas to make it much tougher. But I do believe that Americans are starting to come to their senses and just how crazy this is. And there are two parts of government that you don't touch, and that's Medicaid and Social Security. And that's what these guys are starting to touch. And you're seeing people pissed off to the highest heights of festivity behind it.
I just, in some ways, believe that in all of those other situations, race wasn't introduced. Like the racism now is more rampant, right? It's almost like this administration has given folks a pass to like say the quiet part out loud, and I don't know how you take a step back from some of the harmful things and policies that have been done, particularly to black and brown folks. So that's why I'm saying, you know, Trump is a portion of the problem.
Right.
He's not the entire problem. So removing him doesn't necessarily mean you remove that ideology that he brought to the table and
Right.
that so many people have embraced. And I'm interested to kind of understand what we do. What does the aftermath look like, right? How
Right.
do you repair those relationships? Because I looked at you in a certain way, and even if you didn't say anything racist, you didn't help either.
Right. My fear is that whoever comes after Trump will not be given the purse to restore many of the cuts at the pre-Trump levels. That folks in government on the federal level will start to say, you know what? Well, we made it through these 3 years.
We can do it.
At this level, we can do it. Because the next Democratic president that comes in and openly says, we're going to be hiring everyone back, you're a tax and spend Democrat.
Yeah.
And then how do you manage the messaging? Which goes back to an earlier point that you raised, which is the Democratic Party better get its messaging right and get it ready.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is going to be an issue for the next person that comes in.
Yeah.
You have to rehire some of these folks, and then it'll be, oh, we're ballooning the size of the federal government.
Right.
And it plays into people's fears. And their fears are that they will lose their majority their majority place in this country that they've had since the founding of this country.
Right.
That the government is going to take their guns and do X, Y, and Z and take away their freedoms.
We're being replaced. We're being replaced.
Absolutely. It plays right into racial fear.
And that's where my fear is. Yo, this has been an amazing discussion.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
I appreciate you so much for popping out and hanging out with me.
Yep.
I know you got like 75 jobs. Tell folks where they can find you. The
Sure,
easiest way
sure.
to find you.
You can reach me on social media. I am a music guy at heart, so my social media is Funky Harlemite on Instagram. Yes, indeed, I'm a Funky Harlemite. You can reach me there. I'm launching a new podcast. The podcast is titled The Son of a Podcast, where I will be interviewing the children of celebrities so that we could talk about their lives, what it's like growing up as a son of or daughter of. And so that's launching later this month. You can visit sonofa.com. And that's basically it. I'm honored to be here with you, Sean. You're an inspiration. You certainly inspire me.
Thank you.
And I enjoy working with you, and I wish Collateral Damage nothing but the best, and I look forward to joining you again soon.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And give your dad our best.
I certainly will.
All right. Join me for another episode of Collateral Damage. I appreciate you so much. Peace.